Hi there, my name is Alex, and in this video, we're going to be having a look at Storyboard Pro 24. We have a lot of new features which we've implemented with this new version of the software, and I'm going to take you through them as well as the native features of Storyboard, which you can use to create some really awesome boards and animatics within the software. So we'll start off by having a look at the welcome screen, and from there, we'll actually jump into the software and start looking around the workspace. So here we have the welcome screen to Storyboard Pro. From here, you're going to be able to name your project, choose where you want to store it on your hard drive, give it a title and a subtitle if you choose. You have the option of defining the color space that you're going to be working in, as well as the resolution that you're going to be working at. With the resolution options, we have quite a range from 240p all the way up to 4 and 8K. Being able to define your color space and your resolution at this stage is quite handy as we have integration between Storyboard Pro and Harmony. You're able to export your storyboard scenes as Harmony scene files, including all of the storyboard information that you can use as reference for your animation. So from here, we're going to jump into our project and have a look at the workspace. Okay, so we're going to talk about the user interface and workspaces that we have available within Storyboard Pro. So let's dive into our project and have a look around. So here we have our user interface. As you can see, we have several different windows that we can work within and several different toolbars that we can utilize. These windows can have different tabs, which can be accessed by clicking on the plus button, and any that you don't need can be removed by clicking on the X button. You can create a customized workspace experience for yourself and then save it and take it with you if you happen to be moving around different workstations. We also have a set of default workspaces that you can switch between from within the software and utilize them for different stages within the storyboarding process. So let's have a look. So I've selected my overview workspace. As the name suggests, it gives me an overview of my entire storyboard where I can easily scroll through to see all of the panels that I've created. With this workspace, you also have your storyboard tab available, and this is where you're going to import your script. You can click on this button here to import caption, and then you can select your script from your file browser. With Storyboard Pro, you have the option of importing RTF, TXT, and Final Draft scripts into your project. If you're using a Final Draft script, you can actually use the format of that script to create the layout for your storyboard. So I'm going to import my TXT file into my project. I'm going to select it from my file browser, click Open, and now I have my script loaded into my Storyboard tab, which I can reference through the storyboarding process. We also have another workspace called the vertical workspace, and we can utilize the caption fields to fill in different information for the different scenes or panels that we have within our storyboard. So here we have our vertical workspace. We have different caption areas that we can add different notes for our panels. We have our storyboard tab available where we can simply select our text and drag and drop into our caption areas to quickly add text from our script to our captions. You even have the option of adding a sketch caption where you can use your drawing tools to do any drawovers or visual notes that you want for your panels. So let's have a look. So I've added my sketch caption. To do so, I clicked here and choose Add Sketch. With my brush tool selected, I can very easily draw on my sketch caption and create, as I mentioned, any drawovers or visual notes that I want for my panel. So now that I've gone over the different workspaces that you can utilize and the customizations that you can make to your own personal workspace, let's talk about the different drawing tools that you have available within Storyboard Pro. When working within Storyboard Pro, you have the option of utilizing both bitmap and vector drawing tools. We had a look at our drawing tools with the release of Storyboard Pro 24, and we made some improvements to help artists create some really nice natural looking brushes within the software. So let's see how we can do that. So I have my brush tool selected, and you'll notice that we have some grayed out tools on our toolbar. This is a good indicator that we're working on a bitmap layer, which can be added by clicking on this button here. If you want to work with vectors, you can click on this button to add a vector layer. In our tool properties, you'll notice that we have some presets available to you for your bitmap brushes, but you can click here to open up your bitmap brush properties. At the bottom, you'll notice that we now have our randomness option. With the randomness option, you can now control the randomization of textures on your bitmap brush or your textured vector brush. We've added this improvement to allow artists to create some really nice natural looking brushes within the software. So let's have a look at how adjusting these sliders will affect the way the texture is applied to our brush. By adjusting my Y offset and my X offset, you can see the way in our preview that the textures are randomized on our brush. Any customized brushes that you create will be saved in your presets list and can then be exported to share with others. You can also import brushes into your project as well. So now we are going to have a look at some of the improvements that we've made to our pencil tool. So here we see we have a character sketch that needs to be cleaned up. I'm going to select my pencil, hop over to my tool properties where we can see some presets that we can use, or we can click here to create our own custom pencil. You'll now notice that we have the maximum and minimum opacity sliders. This allows you to control the opacity levels of your pencil within Storyboard Pro. You can click here, and under your opacity properties, you can actually define how these levels are generated, whether it be by the pen pressure, the tilt or angle of the pen as you're drawing, or the speed at which you're drawing at. So let's utilize one of these pencils to start cleaning up our character. So I'm going to add a new vector layer and turn on my light table. With my pencil tool selected, I'm going to utilize one of my stabilizers within the software, specifically the pulled string. The stabilizers within Storyboard Pro are a great way for users to create some nice smooth lines when they're cleaning up their artwork. The software will also recognize any pressure sensitivity changes when you're working with your stabilizer, allowing you to make use of the opacity level changes that you applied to your pencil. We also have a feature within Storyboard Pro allowing you to auto-generate a matte behind any artwork that you create so that you don't see any of the background information behind your characters. So let's see how we can apply that. So I have a clean of my character. With that layer selected, I can go to my layer menu, choose Generate Auto Matte, select the color I wish to use for the matte, hit OK. Once I hit OK again, it will create a new matte layer so that I cannot visualize anything behind my character. I can also utilize one of my editing tools, specifically the cutter tool, to clean up my matte. So here I have my cutter tool selected, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm just going to trace the area that I want to clean up on my matte. Once I'm finished and hit delete, we now have a cleaner matte for our character. I'm now going to introduce you to our Stencil Brush. The Stencil Brush has two modes, the Repaint Brush mode and the Overlay Brush mode. So let's have a look. The Stencil Brush is found underneath your Brush tool. And from your tool properties, you have the option from here to choose your Repaint or your Overlay Brush mode. The Overlay Brush mode is a great way to use the Stencil Brush to create any shadows or highlights to your character in a non-destructive way. So I've chosen my soft shading brush, and I'm going to select a darker gray. And on my matte layer, I'm just going to start adding some shadows to my character. Just like this. I can be as messy as I'd like, as once I'm done, the software will recognize the layer and use it as a matte to know where to apply my shading. It does so in a non-destructive fashion, so I can delete it if I don't like it, or add it to a new layer which I can enable and disable so I can see what my characters look like with shadow or without. We've also added a new Symmetry Guide to Storyboard Pro, so let's have a look where to find that. So I'm going to grab my Guides tab, and here we see we have Perspective Guides. Now we have also that. I'm going to add my Guides tab. We can see we have some Perspective Guides, but we also now have our Symmetry Guides. I can click here to see that I have access to dual axis symmetry, horizontal symmetry, and vertical symmetry. We'll add a vertical symmetry guide, and we're going to lock our guides. I can utilize the Symmetry Guides and the Perspective Guides to quickly create my backgrounds within Storyboard Pro. So I have my guides, and all I'm going to do now is trace my building. And as you can see, any lines that I create will be mirrored on the opposite side of my Symmetry Guide. As I mentioned, this is a great way to quickly create backgrounds on your panel or use it to create symmetrical views of your character. Next, we're going to have a look at how we can utilize our layers and panels and add different effects to our layers while sharing them across different panels within our scenes. We have an option within Storyboard Pro where we can share layers across multiple panels, allowing you to make edits to those layers without having to do so on every single panel that layer exists on. So let's have a look at how we're going to do that. So within this scene, we can see we need to have a focus pull from our character to our phone. We're going to do so by adding a blur to the dude layer. But first we need to share it. So I'm going to right click and come down to share drawing. This will add an asterisk to the front of the layer name. From here, all I have to do is click and drag to a new panel. And since it exists on that panel, I'm going to replace it. And I'm going to do it one more time to the last panel of our scene. Now that I've done that, it's time to add a blur to those layers. So I'm going to go back to my first panel of this scene. I'm going to right click on my shared layer, come down to apply effect, and select blur. From my blur window, I can preview the blur that's going to be applied and then hit OK. As you can see, the software is now telling me that this layer will be converted to a bitmap. This is very important as any vector layers you want to add blur to will be created to a bitmap layer. It's important to have a backup of that vector layer in case you need to make any adjustments to it. So we're going to hit OK. And now that we have our blur applied, if I go to my other panels, I can see that that blur has been applied across the different panels as well. This is a great way to quickly edit different layers across multiple panels, across multiple scenes within your project. Next up, we're going to have a look at how we can create a really awesome multiplane effect using the 3D environment within the software. When working within Storyboard Pro, you have the option of importing multi-layered files to your project as well from external software such as Photoshop. We have a scene prepared where we have already imported a multi-layered file, so let's have a look and see what that looks like. So on our layer list, we can see we have a Cloud Train Cityscape group. I can enable it and open up this group to see all of the different layers that were added from our Photoshop file. We're also going to add some animation to one of the layers within this scene, as well as add a camera move to create a really nice multiplaning effect. So I have my layer selected, and I'm going to grab my layer transform tool. Under tool properties, I'm going to add a keyframe to the beginning of my panel. I'm going to use this button to jump to the last frame of my panel and add another keyframe. Now I'm going to utilize my controller to drag my character across the rooftop and off screen. And if I scrub through my panel now, we can see that we've easily added animation to our layer. Of course, now we're going to need to add our camera move animation. I'm going to select my camera tool. Under tool properties, I'm going to add a keyframe to the beginning of my panel and one to the end of my panel. I'm going to scrub to the end. And on this keyframe, I'm going to use the camera controller to move my camera across. And I'm also going to zoom out a bit so that I can see a bit more of the background. I'm going to recenter and turn on my camera mask. And now if I scrub through, we can see that we've added a really nice camera move and animation to our character. As you can see within this scene, we have 3D models. With Storyboard Pro 24, we overhauled the technology that we use to visualize and work with 3D models within the software. So we're now using the Vulkan Scene Graph. Let's have a look at our stage view so that we can visualize how the 3D model and the layers are organized within the 3D space. I can click on my stage view, and I can zoom out. And from here, I can rotate my scene so that we can see the size of our 3D model. and also how we've organized the layers in the background. By organizing layers in the background at different distances from our camera, we can create a really awesome multiplane effect within Storyboard Pro as well. So we're just going to scrub through one more time so that we can see the awesome multiplaning that we've achieved. From here, we're going to have a look at how the 3D improvements to Storyboard Pro 24 makes it a lot easier to work with 3D models within the software. In Storyboard Pro, you're going to have the option of visualizing your 3D models as either full 3D models or 2D assets within the software. So let's have a look at another scene within our board where we're using a 3D model as both a 2D asset and a 3D asset. If we scrub through our scene, we can see on 2 panels, we're using a 3D object in the background. On panel 4, we're viewing that 3D object as a 2D asset. Under our Layers tab, we can see we have new icons in order to work with these 3D models, and we're currently looking at this one in bitmap mode. If I click here, we can open up our Render to Bitmap window, where we can access the full 3D model and reposition it if we need to. And we can rotate it, change the translation, and once we hit Render, it will update the view of that 3D model within our scene. This is a great option to work with your 3D models in cases where you don't necessarily want to have the full 3D model within your scene. If I don't like how I've reoriented my 3D model, I can simply hit Ctrl-Z on my keyboard to go back to the previous orientation. On panel 5, we can see that we have our full 3D model, but using the new icons, I can easily switch between bitmap mode and full 3D mode. This is just one of the improvements that we've made to working with 3D within Storyboard Pro 24. And you also have the option of drawing on your 3D surfaces within the software. This is very easy to do using our Create Layer on Surface tool. So let's have a look at how we can do that. So here we have our next scene, and let's play it back so that we can see what we have happening. We can see that we have a situation where our character is barely missed by a car. And we're going to add a license plate number utilizing our Create Layer on Surface. I select the tool, select my 3D model, and as you can see, the cursor will reorient itself depending on which layer it's currently hovering over. And I'm going to hold down Control and click the area that I'd like to create a new layer, which is parented to the 3D model. I'm going to grab my brush tool, and I'm going to choose a brush. Let's use Solid Brush 4. I'm going to increase it. And now I'm going to write SBP24. And since it's parented to the 3D model, I can select the model. And if I rotate it, that 2D asset will be updated as well, depending on the angle, as well as the view of the camera. We've also improved the way that we can parent these layers to the 3D model in other panels within the same scene. So what I'll do is I'll select my 2D layer, right-click, copy selected layers, and then I'm going to select the layers where I want this to be pasted. Go to my layer menu and choose to paste layer special. And all I have to do now is simply drag and drop my layers onto my 3D car, and the software will remember exactly which surface that 2D asset was parented to. And if I scrub through now, we can see that 2D layer is following the car as it animates through the scene. We've also added a new way that you can work with 3D models within Storyboard Pro 24. We've added the bone selection mode to our layer transform tool, allowing you to visualize and work with bone armatures within 3D models, allowing you to pose them or reanimate them within the software. So let's go down our timeline and find a new scene where we can make use of this. So here's our new scene, and let's play it to see what we have. You may have noticed that on one of the panels, we are missing a pose for a character, and we can utilize a 3D model to use as reference to create that pose. So let's have a look. In case you missed it, here is the panel that's missing the pose for our character. Of course, we can utilize our onion skin to see the future and past frames and use those as reference to create the pose for our character. But we have a 3D mannequin in our layer list that we can enable, and utilizing the layer transform tool and our new show 3D bone controls, we can select our model, and I can zoom in to show you our new 3D armature with that model, which we can access and rotate and pose and use this as a reference to create the new pose for our character. This is a handy tool that can be used on any 3D model with a bone structure, allowing you to pose it for reference or edit any animation that you might need for your animatic. So let's go back to our board and have a look at the new pose that we created using the 3D model as reference. So here we have it, a brand new pose for our character, and I can now hide my 3D model, enable the matte behind my character, and now we can see we have a great pose for our character for our scene. So as you can see, these are just some of the ways that you can utilize the new 3D features within Storyboard Pro to more effectively work with 3D models within the software. Next, we're going to have a look at how we can work with video within Storyboard Pro as well as layer opacity keyframes. When working in Storyboard Pro, you have the option of adding video to your animatic as well as adjusting the opacity levels of layers over time. So let's dive back into our project, add a video, and see how we can visualize the keyframes of opacity levels within the timeline. So here we have our scene, and we're going to give it a play. And already you can see that we have some opacity changes on one of our layers within this panel. In previous versions of Storyboard Pro, you weren't actually able to visualize the opacity keyframes on layers within the software. But with Storyboard Pro 24, you can do so. With our layer selected, on the timeline next to the layer name, we can see a graphic which we can click to visualize either the motion keyframes of that layer or the opacity keyframes. We can select opacity keyframes, and here we have the keyframes of our opacity levels. From here, we're going to add a video track to our scene. And we can also talk about how we can add layers to that video track as well to make our animatic a bit more dynamic. If I come down my scene, and I'm going to open up my timeline a bit more, I can right-click above my storyboard panels to add a new video track. From here, I just need to find my video track in my file browser, and I can easily drop it right onto my video track within Storyboard Pro. I've located the video I wish to import, and I can now simply drag and drop it right onto my timeline. Once it's imported, I can select it and position it exactly where I want it, and I can even reduce the length of it as well so that it fits over the area that I need. From here, what I can do is I can actually move the track underneath my storyboard panels and copy a layer from my storyboard panel onto that video track. If I scrub through my timeline, we can see that I need to first reposition and resize my video within my animatic. So I'm going to do so with the use of my layer transform tool, and with my video track selected and my video selected, I'm going to resize it to fit exactly on the billboard within the scene. Just like this. And if I scrub through even further, we can see that it actually sits above my character. So I need to right-click once again, choose Move Track Down, and then I'm going to scrub back to the beginning of this section. I'm going to select my storyboard panel. I'm going to copy my billboard layer onto my video track, paste it, reposition the artwork underneath the video, make sure that layer is hidden on my storyboard panel. And on my video track, I'm going to utilize my select tool to reposition the billboard directly behind the video itself. And if I scrub through now, we can see it's exactly where I need it to be. So as you can see, you can add layers to your video track, and a great use of this is for your background information, allowing you to utilize the storyboard panels for your characters or any props that you might need for that particular scene. With Storyboard Pro, you're able to save completed scenes in your library and then import them into other projects within the storyboarding pipeline. We've also added a new feature to Storyboard Pro 24, which will allow you to easily retime the panels of these imported scenes after you've added them to your project. So let's see how we can do that. I'm going to use my thumbnail view, find the end of scene 14 and the beginning of scene 15, and from my library, I'm going to import or drag and drop my new scene right between these two existing scenes. We now had to rename the scene because the scene that we brought in shares the name with the scene that already exists, specifically scene 15. So I can click here, choose renumber scenes, and once I input the new name that I want here, we can see that the rest of the scenes will be automatically updated to follow along in sequence. Once I hit OK, we can now see we have a new scene 15 added to our timeline. From here, I'm going to retime the panels using the new Retime Panels feature. This new feature will allow you to retime panels proportionately, respecting the different timing of those panels. I'm going to go back to my timeline. I'm going to select the panels I wish to retime, choose my storyboard menu, and come down to Retime Panels. From this window, I can see the total duration of the panels that I've selected, and I actually want them to complete over 1 second. I can change the value there and hit OK, and you can see it will automatically update the timing of those panels for me so that they will be completed in 24 seconds. As you can see, this feature will allow you to really quickly and easily retime your panels. Now we're going to actually have a look at working with audio within Storyboard Pro and some of the new features that we've added to make that process a lot easier. Storyboard Pro is a very versatile storyboarding and animatic creation software. From within the software, you can add and edit 2D assets, work with and repose and reanimate 3D models. You can also retime your scenes and panels across the timeline very easily as well. Another great feature is being able to work with and edit audio within the software. And with Storyboard Pro 24, we've added some improvements to that process as well. We're going to revisit a scene that we edited earlier and add some audio effects to make it more interesting. So here we have our character jumping from the wire to the drain pipe on the building and proceeding to slide down. There is a point where the drain pipe starts to shake, so it might be interesting to add an audio effect here of him gasping. We can easily add audio from our library and import it to an audio track within our timeline. With Storyboard Pro 24, we can now preview that audio and select the areas of that audio track which we wish to import. From my library, I can select my audio folder. I can find the audio track I wish to use and double click on it. As you can see, I can now preview the waveform of that audio file and even preview it from the library folder by clicking on the play button. I can also utilize the set in position for audio and set out position for audio buttons to choose the area of the audio that I wish to import to my timeline. I'm going to scrub through here, select the in position, and set the out position. I have my audio track selected, and all I have to do is click on my Insert Audio in Timeline. As you can see, the audio is imported directly to the audio track exactly where the playback cursor is positioned. This new feature is really useful, especially if you have a long piece of audio which you need to scrub through and preview to find the exact position that you need to import it to your timeline. With Storyboard Pro 24, you can now animate audio effects over time by adding keyframes to your audio effects from within your effect stack. As you can see, there is a piece of audio that I want to add an effect to. I can go to my effect stack to preview what it sounds like now. And then I'm going to add the pitch shift effect. I'm going to scroll back on my timeline, expand my effect, and add a keyframe by clicking on the plus button. I'm going to scroll down my timeline a bit to about this point, and add another keyframe. And I'm going to use this arrow to go back to my first keyframe, adjust the value to 2, and on my final keyframe, I'm going to adjust the value to 1. Now I'm going to go back a bit and preview the audio once again. This is a really great feature for anyone that wants to do audio editing within the software. So we've come to the end of the storyboarding or animatic creation process, and now it's time to export. With Storyboard Pro 24, we've made improvements to our PDF export option, but we have others that we can choose from. So let's have a look and see what we have. So now we're going to have a look at some of the export options from Storyboard Pro. We can go to our File menu and come down to Export. As you can see, we can export bitmap, layout, current image, CSV, and we even have the option to export to EDL, AAF, and XML. You even have a confirmation option where you can export to EDL, AAF, or XML, open that project within Final Cut or Adobe Premiere, and then bring that project back into Storyboard if you want to make additional edits within our software. With Storyboard Pro 24, we've also made an improvement to our PDF export option, allowing you to see a preview of your PDF before you export it. So let's have a look and see what we have. We can go back to our File menu and select our Export option and choose PDF. We can see from this new window that we have access to a list of default options that we can choose from, but we can also click here to create our own customized profile. From this window, we can see the new preview area where we can visualize any changes to the customizable options that we have on the left. So I'm going to update my number of rows to 3. And I can also use the arrows here to cycle through the pages to see the updates that I made. This is a great new